And the Biden administration, for its part, has responded by saying, Biden said he practically declared a climate emergency, which earned him a lot of criticism.
Right.
He says him and his proponents in Congress say that through the Inflation Reduction Act, they've actually done a lot of these actions, by streamlining renewable production and, creating incentives both on the consumer and the manufacturing side.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by Energy and Environment Reporter Breanne Deppisch. Breanne, President Biden is under pressure to declare a climate emergency. What would that look like, and what would it give him powers to do?
Absolutely. Biden has been under pressure, increasingly so this summer, to declare a climate emergency, most recently in response to the wildfires in Maui, which are the most deadly wildfires in modern U.S. history. For 100 deaths recorded so far, more likely to come. Basically, a climate emergency would allow the president to do several things. The first would be to invoke the emergency executive power. This is a 1976 law that would allow Biden to take certain steps to circumvent Congress, such as on issues such as oil and gas drilling, leasing for things like that, certain things that Republicans, are vehemently against. Basically, things to stop fossil fuel production and limit climate change and emissions, obviously that the administration has railed against, and that it says are driving these extreme weather events. The second would be to allow him to tap the Defense Production Act. You'll recall this is what Trump used after COVID-19 to sort of streamline and prioritize production of certain health-related products. In this case, they could use the supply chain for manufacturing of renewable energy products. This would be solar panels, wind turbines, just different renewable energy products that would allow the U.S. to meet its renewable goals earlier than expected. And the Biden administration, for its part, has responded by saying, Biden said he practically declared a climate emergency, which earned him a lot of criticism.
Right.
He says him and his proponents in Congress say that through the Inflation Reduction Act, they've actually done a lot of these actions, by streamlining renewable production and, creating incentives both on the consumer and the manufacturing side.
Now, if he were to actually declare a climate emergency, there would be also some pushback on Capitol Hill, no?
Absolutely. We would see a lot of pushback from Republicans and probably even some moderates. I think, maybe some in the Manchin camp, other states.
That sounds like a summer camp.
Manchin.
Camp.
I would, sign me up. Camp Manchin and others, other moderates, especially in states that have a lot of oil and gas production.
Sure.
We would likely see a lot of pushback there. As well as states that were critical minerals mining and things like that. It's unclear if those would be affected in a potential climate emergency. Although so far it's worth noting that this is just speculation. Biden did not declare a climate disaster or a climate emergency in Maui as many thought he would. He made a trip to the islands earlier this month and then returned without doing so.
And so water is also heating up there. You've written about some tensions between Japan and China. Talk a little bit about what's going on there. What is the issues at play?
I thought you meant water temperatures, and I was like, we could go there too, Jim.
Not a drop to drink.
Water is certainly a top issue in the Pacific this week, with Japan actually going forward with the release of several million tons of water of treated wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Obviously, that was destroyed in the tsunami and earthquake, the second largest nuclear power plant disaster following Chernobyl. It's been efforts to release the treated wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. Really got a push from the government within the last couple of years. It noted that these big storage tanks that had been holding the water were about 98% full, leaving it with very few options. And they put forth this plan that basically involves mixing a ton of water from the Pacific with the treated wastewater and then releasing it into the ocean. This has done little to assuage neighboring countries.
Right, it's not made some people very happy.
Exactly. The IAEA, that's the UN's nuclear watchdog, signed off on the plan last month. But China and South Korea, its neighbors, have really been opposed to this. And actually, China reacted immediately after it began releasing the water into the Pacific by banning all aquatic imports, all fish, all marine life from Japan into China's borders, which is actually a pretty significant economic loss to Japan.
Because China's a pretty big market.
They are a pretty big market. They are a huge consumer of Japanese seafood and other aquatic imports, I guess, other marine life imports. There were also protests in South Korea, in Seoul, and Beijing by consumers that said they do not want to be affected by this. You know, it's too early to say the adverse health consequences that could come as a result of this wastewater being released.
So are people concerned about, number one, environmental consequences, and number two, whether there are health risks to people living in these other countries?
Exactly. And China's foreign ministry, and others, it's worth noting, it's not just China, have said that it's just too early to say whether or not the contaminants that are still left in the water or the radioactive levels, they've been deemed safe by the IAEA, but there hasn't really been enough evidence on human health and on their impacts to safely, release it into things that could be consumed by millions and millions of people around the globe. So.
Thank you, Breanne.
Thank you.
Hope you have a fun trip to Mansion Camp.
I can't mansion. I'm excited. Enlist me. Enroll. I'll enroll.
We'll mention it next time. You can read Breanne and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.